Less of Me Success Stories. I'm your host, Robyn Dobbins, and my co-host, Scott King, will be running the chat tonight. Hi, Scott.
Hey there, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We just want to let you guys know, we know what it's like to be hopeless and helpless. Your journey is not over, and you can rewrite your story at any time. We provide a platform here to share stories of people that have reclaimed their lives with using dietary intervention.
Thank you. Please take a moment to share the link to this live show on your social media. We appreciate our audience and thank you for helping our channel grow. As a reminder, none of us are medical professionals. We are not offering any medical advice. Please consult with your medical team before trying any dietary interventions. Now, let's talk about tonight's guest. I'm sure Scott would agree that our guest has been an instrumental part of our healing journey. She has fed me without actually cooking for me for the last 7 years. It's hard to list all that she does for the low-carb, gluten-free community. She has a massive amount of free content, including being co-host of Fitness Confidential. She has 3 cookbooks, Eat Happy, Eat Happy 2, and now the new Eat Happy Italian. And she has a line of sauces and spices from Eat Happy Kitchen. This is just the big stuff. She's also willing to answer questions, celebrate victories, or help during challenging times. I'm happy to introduce to you our friend, Anna Vocino. Welcome, Anna.
Oh, that's such a nice intro. Thank you. You make me feel real special.
Well, you are real special, so I'm glad that you felt it.
I feel the love. Hi, welcome everybody who's listening in the internets. I like that you guys do a live show. No one does a live show, and we're doing it. We're doing it live.
We are doing it because we were when we planned this whole thing back a year ago now. A year ago when we were planning this thing, we were like, hey, let's do it the dumbest way possible and let's do it live. And so here we are doing it live.
But live is you don't have to edit anything. It's just what you see is what you get, guys. Like we're off the cuff. We're living our lives live.
Yeah. And we really wanted to include the conversation. We wanted the audience to be close to our guest because we learn so much from each other. And it's just hard to do that when you're only listening. So that's why we weren't really being stupid. We kind of had a plan. So anyway, welcome. We just do this thing where we just have a conversation and tell our stories and all that stuff. So I'm going to turn it over to you. And later on, some of our guests that are in the chat will probably start asking questions. So Scott and I will cut in and ask those questions.
You'll tell me when there's questions.
Absolutely.
You'll interrupt me when I'm being too long-winded.
Sure. No, yes. Well, we got this.
Anna, shut up. They've heard enough.
We've already heard it enough already. Yeah,
oh
that's
God.
how we roll.
Well, I feel, here's the thing. Here's something I've learned is that I feel like I've told my story so many times, but I have to remember that there's always somebody new who's listening. And you never know when you're going to say that one thing of your story. And as evidenced by you and I, Robyn, were texting about something you read in my cookbook that you had not seen before or known that part of my story before. And I appreciated it resonating, you know? So I will say this. Anybody who thinks that there's a beginning and a middle and an end to their story is delusional or hasn't lived long enough. Because I feel like I've had so many beginnings, middles, and ends, and it won't ever end. And when I say that, I want to apply that concept to our bodies and how we treat our bodies, because oftentimes as women, we like to think of the number we were in high school. And by number, I mean weight. What's the weight we were in high school? What's the weight we were at this point? How much did you weigh when you got pregnant? How much did you weigh when you were 9 months pregnant? How much did you weigh when you got pregnant the second time? You know, we track all these numbers in our heads, and it's like, we're so intelligent. And yet we spend so much time tracking like an arbitrary number, not totally arbitrary, because weight does matter to a certain extent, but you know, we will track like, well, this is when I weighed that, and that's when I weighed this. And we then assign some sort of arbitrary meaning to who we are as a people. to those weights. Well, if I could get back to that weight, I don't even have to be high school weight. If I could just get back to when I was 23 and did the thing and before I got pregnant, and so I am the queen of having spent a lot of time doing that. I'm also the queen of having spent a lot of time doing different diets, and they suck. That's my long and short of it. Diets suck. And so in 2002, I was diagnosed with celiac disease, and nobody knew what that was then. My friend, my friend Jenny, who is a type 1 diabetic, told me about gluten back in 2001, and she's trying to watch her gluten because sometimes diabetics, type 1s, can be diagnosed with what's called celiac disease. And I was like, that's weird. But my ears perked up for whatever reason, and I listened because my mom was always so sick and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. She bruised easily. Like the wind would blow and she'd get a bruise. When she fell, she would break a bone. And this is at a younger age when you shouldn't be falling and breaking a bone. She had terrible bipolar, and she was diagnosed with all sorts of things, but the bipolar one I feel like is the most relevant, and knowing what I know now is the one that was most affected me. But she was diagnosed with multiple personalities. She was diagnosed with borderline. She was diagnosed with all kinds of mental health issues. And it was tough a lot of times to be her daughter. And I'm sure it was tough on her to be my mother too, because I didn't make it easy on her either. But she was getting to the point where she was so sick that she was having to have blood transfusion. She wasn't making enough blood. Her body wasn't making enough blood. And they could not figure out what was wrong with her. So I just happened to mention this celiac thing. And I was like, you're going to have to ask the doctor for the right blood test. Like, it's not something they order. Nobody knew anything about it. And turns out she had it. And then she called me. She's like, you have to get tested because it's hereditary. And even though I look Italian and I take after my mom with my genetics, health-wise. So I have celiac and had to figure that out. And at the time, I remember sitting in our little kitchen in North Hollywood, in our little tiny apartment before we were able to afford to buy a house, and eating a sleeve of JoJo's, the Trader Joe's imitation Oreos. They're called Joe. Y'all don't know. You're like, I don't know what that is. I don't eat that shit.
I do not, but I do not have a Trader Joe's. So,
okay. Well, they're basically just like private labeled Oreos. They're trash. They're not good.
Yeah.
And I was eating like you don't eat one, you eat like 17 of them. And so I was eating that. And by the way, to make things even more obnoxious, I was a size 2. I was so thin. So it didn't make any sense that I was sickly at all, right? Because in our society, if you're super thin, you're healthy, right? That's what you want. That's the goal. We all want to be super thin. And so I was eating a sleeve of JoJo's and told my husband it would take a doctor telling me that I'm not allowed to eat these for me to stop eating these. And I don't know why that stuck in my head, but I feel like God, the universe, whatever you want to call the higher power, if you believe in one, which I do, was like, you know what, girl, guess what? We're going to give you a surprise, which is the doctor's going to tell you can't eat those. And I remember going through this big period of mourning and temper tantruming. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I did the zone, I did Atkins. So I already kind of knew like carbs weren't the best. And so and I knew when I wanted to work on camera, because that was what I was doing at the time, was working on camera as an actor. I just don't eat bread and pasta and you'll lose some weight. But I didn't realize that gluten wasn't everything. And it really annoyed me to have to cut it all out. And for a little while, I got a little healthier, but I also put on weight. And then I also was upset at all the gluten-free foods. And I was lucky I lived in LA. So we had a Whole Foods with a little gluten-free section, but they tasted terrible and they were expensive. Other countries have gluten-free foods and they're oftentimes subsidized by the government, which is a very interesting place to be, because we're just like, the only thing we're going to subsidize is, Cheez-Its. That's all, that's all that we subsidize as a country. So, it was an interesting place to be. And I was progressively getting heavier and heavier for my frame. I was getting heavier and heavier. and at odds because I was like, well, I'm doing well in voiceover. Maybe I just won't work on camera anymore. Else I can still jump on stage and tell jokes, but I won't try to audition. I'm at that weight where it's like, I either got to get big and be character, or I got to be skinny, and I don't want to do any of it. I just want to be me. And I started blogging gluten-free recipes, and it was pretty great. I learned a lot about, I know a lot about gluten-free flours and how to substitute things, but it made me unhealthy, So when I met Vinnie Tortorich I met him much earlier, but when we started podcasting in 2012, in the early episode, you hear me, be incredulous at his assertions that if I would cut out sugars and grains, like, no, I'm just going to go do Weight Watchers again. I'm good. And then I decided to go full force in August 2013. It took me a full year and a half of podcasting with him to actually commit and do it, and have not looked back. Like not even a doubt in my mind. Sure, there are times when you're like, okay, I went on a bender or vacation or a thing. And when I say bender, I mean like a week, because I feel very blessed to have a body type that when I do go back to eating sugars and grains, and I'll never have gluten. I don't have gluten. But if I do go back to eating sugars and grains, I feel it, and I can't go on a bender for that long. But I agree with what Vinnie says, which is it's not what you eat between Christmas and New Year's, what you eat between New Year's and Christmas. So I'm not one who goes off the rails. Once I find something, I really stick with it. I like it. However, I will say, to open it up to the people who are like, they disappear for like 8 months and then they come back and maybe they've gained the weight back, and it's okay. That's still part of the journey too. If that's part of your journey, that's okay. So now, I love food and I love writing recipes, and turns out I'm really good at it. And I am very strict with quality control. So I want everything that I publish to be useful. I want to be of service. I'm very much of that mindset. And now it's turned into sauces and spices, and we're about to launch cheese bites, and we're about to rebrand our spices and put them in grocery stores. We're about to open up the Amazon channel, because right now we've only been selling direct to consumer and into grocery stores. We're doing a lot. A lot is happening, and I would like to blow it up in a really big way. And I want to be part of a bigger change. And a lot of it had to do with being in my 20s and not being able to find something to eat that would taste good and also nourish my body. Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
I think this is really interesting, because you just said that you had this calling, like you felt like it was a calling that,
Mm-hmm.
And then you've actually taken that like very much to heart. You were kicking and screaming. You didn't want to go through this, but you were somehow led to this, and then you continue to serve by what you create and what you put out there. And like I said in our introduction, Scott and I for sure have definitely used every recipe possible and listened to your advice through the years, and it's all coming from this very strong core that you have to give back to others. It's not something you see. It's a lot of people out there that they just want to be the face of something, and that's what we get. That's the difference between what you put out there, is that it's not just about this face and this name. It's about each and every single one of us, and we can feel that. So I just wanted to cut in and say that, because it's already a theme in what you're talking about, is this calling.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, well, we have the hindsight, and I'm older than you guys, but we have the hindsight of being able, the benefit of being able to use hindsight is what I meant to say. And now that I'm 51, I can certainly look back and see the threads and how they kind of wove in, and why I chose the things that I chose. I do believe that everybody has a different value system. Everybody has different things, and sometimes you're aligned with people on things, and sometimes you're really not. But you can certainly look back on your own life and see the themes that you've played out. You can see the moments in your life where you've had drama, and where you've kind of lived out that drama and seen, oh, okay, what if, and the parts of you that you've healed. And this is always, the reason I always bring this up, mindset's hugely important to me. And mindset and creating positive beliefs is really important. And part of that was growing up with the mom that I grew up with. And, you know, she's since passed away, and I am okay. I am totally healed in my relationship with her, and I forgive her and she forgives me. You know what I mean? Like, our relationship is great. But I do feel like I lived the first half of my life for her because I didn't understand how to draw that boundary. And now I'm living the second half of my life for me. And part of that is learning. And a lot of us who deal with weight loss and health issues have issues with boundaries. And I'm very, very intrigued by the idea of the mind-body connection and kind of seeing where our bodies have weak points due to our areas where our beliefs might not be serving us so well. So boundaries have been a big thing for me. And by the way, I have to have a strong enough calling to be able to put my work out there, because it's not something I love doing, getting criticized. I know nobody loves that. Nobody loves getting criticized, but it has to be a strong enough calling for me to want to push through the negative noise and want to create and want to share. I want to use my voice to nourish people through food. That's what my calling is. And I know that now, but I might not have known that 10 years ago when I was starting with this, but luckily followed through with, you know, at least write some kick-ass recipes, and let's get those in a book and get that out there, you know.
So how did that evolve? I mean, I don't imagine that you ever thought that you would be writing cookbooks or launching a food company.
Yeah.
So how did that evolve for you? And how did that affect your own personal journey as well?
Yeah. I mean, if I knew in August of 2020, when I launched the first jar of marinara, what I know now, I would never have done it. It's way too much. But it's like that thing, you know, how do you eat the elephant?
Back in information on that, having experienced it with you.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's too much. But you kind of grow to, I mean, here's something I've said to myself for years. I remember watching Good Will Hunting and being like, so years ago when a movie came out, like 97 or something. I remember watching the movie and being like so impressed by these guys. They wrote the movie, they acted in it, they got it made, you know, it's like super cool that they did that. And I kind of like held that up as like a hero moment, that these guys created this something out of nothing. And they were kind of nobody, like they had worked, but they were kind of nobodies. And I love that story. But then I realized, I was like, well, Matt Damon wasn't always Matt Damon. Like, he didn't like just hit the ground running and like all of a sudden he's winning Oscars. Like, there's a lot of choices and a lot of work that goes into building it. So that in my mind, I just have these certain things that I have to tell myself, because life is hard. And if you want to branch out and do anything entrepreneurial or creative, it's going to be painful and you're going to be served a lot of shit sandwiches. So you got to like, some people are very tough. I will admit that, like, in some ways I'm very tough, and in some ways I'm very not tough. And that's okay. Like, I think part of my sensitivity is what makes me a very good creator of recipes. My sensitivity allows me to smell spices and put things together and put recipes together. So my sensitivity allows me to observe what's happening in a room and write a joke about it and tell that joke on stage. So you have to embrace these kind of softer parts of yourself and figure out where you can shore up on your weaknesses. So how did it evolve? Very slowly. I think other people write really quickly. My first book took me 4 years to write. My second book took me 3 years to write. My third book took me a year to write. So my fourth book that I'm doing now will be a total of 6 months. So everything's getting shorter. Plus I'm writing recipes in between. You know, you get smarter and better at things the more you do them. When I wrote the first book, I was terrified to put it out there. It's so scary. And then the second book, I knew it was a better book because you just naturally get better at stuff. And then the third book, you're like, well, gosh, I hope those first two weren't a fluke. You know what I mean? So it always is a very vulnerable place to be, to put yourself out there with big projects like that. But I talk about this in the intro of my third book. There was a man named Mike who called me saying that he lost 80 pounds cooking out of my first book. And he's a food manufacturer. And he said, let's do your marinara. I've heard you talk about it on the podcast. And I was like, oh, Mike, no, Mike, everybody makes their own marinara. No one would buy a jarred sauce. And he was like, no, actually, they do buy jarred sauces. Have you been to a grocery store? I was like, yeah, but I don't walk into that section. Since then, I've had to educate myself on all the jarred sauces, so I understand the competitive landscape, and I do.
Well, I would have been just like you too, because we always made our own sauce as well.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and
I would have been just as confused.
Yeah. You're like, what? Why would I do that? But I understood also his mission was that he wants to be part of the solution. And as a food manufacturer, to come and say, hey, let's figure out a way to make something that people have been adding sugar to. Let's figure out a way to do your recipe that's so good. And it's no small feat to adapt. It's not tablespoons and teaspoons and cups and ounces. I mean, you're adapting for like giant kettles, and you're doing volumetrics and figuring out, how it's. I said my only qualifier. Let's get this dialed in. My only qualifier is that it has to taste like I snuck in your kitchen and made it for you. If it's anything less than that, why bother? It's too competitive. It's nuts. Rayo's just sold to Campbell's for $2.7 billion. Do you think I want to go through this effort to build this company when you're up against Campbell's? This is why Rayo's is always on sale. Okay, I'm getting fired up. This is why Rayo's is always on sale, because Campbell's now owns Rayo's. Campbell's could write off all of Rayo's as a complete loss. It just could be a loss leader for them. Well, I don't know if I'm not saying that that's their business model, but they could be doing that. And it doesn't matter. Just like how Amazon sells books as a loss leader, because it gets you in the door buying other things. And I'm not saying that Campbell's is doing that. Please don't come after Campbell's. Don't come after me unless you want to buy my company.
Big Campbell's is a sponsor, so we'll just have
oh
to.
God,
we'll have
now
to write
it's
a
awkward.
letter.
We love your soups.
Yeah.
They're the most amazing soups. But it's like it's so much work to go up against these big boys. And as like Mr. Wonderful says on Shark Tank, they'll squash you like the cockroach you are. And I'm like, yeah, no, I get that. I feel that. So if I want to do it, at least it's got to taste the best, So that's kind of the thinking behind that. And then my co-founders and I went into like, I've always wanted to sell my taco seasoning, which the recipe's in the first book. I've always wanted to sell that. I've always wanted, and trying to find spice people who would make spices without putting cornstarch or brown rice hulls or pulverized dates or whatever, maltodextrin. That's a huge one. And thinking to myself, well, I love my ranch dip, I love my taco seasoning, and I love that barbecue dust that I do on the pork chop dry rub. What if we did that? And we just take a lot of time to make sure that we dial it in and get it right, not only from an ingredient quality standpoint, but flavor. Because at the end of the day, we're Americans, and it's got to taste good. No one's going to stick to NSNG if it didn't taste good.
Yeah, that's right. When I think it tastes good, because I've stuck with it. So in this process of making the food company and working with manufacturers and the like, were there things that were kind of novel to the industry that because you wanted to do it this way, that it changed some things?
Yeah, I mean, to find a partner. Now there are food manufacturers all over the country. And if you're out there listening and you're like, I have the best salsa, I want to make the salsa, I have the best, whatever, hot sauce, I want to do the hot sauce, I have the best thing. Because there are a lot of folks out there, and you hear that all the time. Oh my gosh, your grandmother's brownies, they're the best thing ever. Like you should sell these. And oftentimes they'll make you do the smaller version at home, and if you have a cottage law, you could do it and go to the farmer's market and sell your salsa or your jellies or your whatever. But if you're scaling up in a big way, you've got to find a partner who gets the high quality ingredients, who's not going to sneak something in, who you can trust to make the good stuff. I have the guy who gets me my cheese for the pink crema sauce. We only use cheese in one flavor. And I'm so specific about it. It used to be we would grate the Parmesan there. Well, now we're with a manufacturer that can't grate the Parmesan. So I had to then go find Parmesan that's pre-grated that doesn't have any anti-caking on it, because that's cellulose and that's wood pulp. And we're not eating wood pulp. I'm not feeding that to people. And here's how you can tell the difference. If you opened up a jarred sauce that's not mine, when it's cold, it looks like almost has like a cottage cheese kind of curd look, because that's the wood pulp making things stick together when it's cold. When you heat it up, that kind of goes away. I mean, it definitely goes away. But when you open up mine, it's already been cooked in and it's smooth because there's no anti-caking in there that makes it do the little curdle cottage cheese curd looking thing. So making the guy who gets my cheese believes in the cause so much. This guy drives an hour to go pick up a special amount of cheese that he basically siphons off of these guys that sell it to Costco, because Costco has this same cheese that without the anti-caking. And he does, every time we make it, he drives an hour each way to get me that cheese. Like, I'm just waiting for him to be like, I'm tired of getting you the cheese. You're going to have to source it yourself. And he's selling it to me for the same price that he sells to Costco. So when you find these people who are willing, who care that much, I mean, they're gems. You know what I mean? Like, and I just hope that we can continue to grow it. And I really want to get to a place where we're making so much that then I'm buying the large pallet of cheese instead of just 150 pounds of cheese off of the Costco, like that I'm able to do that with this company. But it is talk about a novel thing. It, like with most businesses, it's really people driven. So you just got to hope that you find the right people.
I have to imagine that there are more people out there that are trying to bring this type of food into the market. It's just so difficult because the market's so overrun by the big companies. So I'm sure there's a lot of people like you out there trying to fight this fight.
Yeah, I think there are
you got
more
to
of
find
us
each
every
other.
day. Yeah. In fact, I'm going to start a series on my Instagram where I do shout outs to other food companies who are doing, because I want to like start highlighting some other food founders who are fighting the good fight, you know, because it's really hard and it's a rough business, because I always joke that if I could have just done a keto cracker or keto cookie or something and just filled it with crap, I'd be a lot richer right now.
You'd be at all the conferences.
I'd be at all the conferences.
Yeah.
Shilling my keto crackers.
Every time I go to a conference, I'm like, oh, I don't eat that. Oh, I don't eat that. Oh, it's just not what I
always
do.
I always look at the ingredients because I always want to find something that I can eat. And it's so funny because I always go back to the homemade stuff. And I will never, I have visions for growing Eat Happy Kitchen way beyond the categories that we're in, including mayos, dressings, salsa. Like, I have a big MO with it because I want somebody to be able to go in the grocery store and be at every turn, know that they can pick that up and know it's, look at this green salsa. I want to make sure I want to buy this one because I know that her sauces taste good. You know, I have big visions for that, but it's like, it's going to take a little while. It's going to take a little while to get there.
Yeah. And okay. Everyone, we are going to open up for questions soon. And I do see that Scott has some, but keep writing them down so that we can get all those questions. Yeah, Scott's on it.
He's doing the thing.
Yeah, y'all don't know the very professional stuff we have going on in the background around here. But I did want to say, as a consumer of goods, that I will appreciate your Instagram, this idea you have for your Instagram, because it is hard to find stuff. And when we find it, we need to scream and shout and support those things.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's really important. So, okay, I'm going to turn it over to Scott for questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I have a two-part question, and this is from our friend Kurt. So he asked, what are your earliest memories in the kitchen, and also, will there ever be a casserole hot dish conversion guide?
I'm gonna answer the second question first. No. Will there never be a hot dish cookbook?
Really?
Yeah. There might be a casserole cookbook because that's what they're called.
I agree.
Okay. Now that we've clarified that, I always will keep I love a casserole. I'll put one hot dish recipe in there just for Kurt. I didn't know the term hot dish until I met Kurt. So I got to credit him where credit is due. He's teaching me. I need to go on a food tour he sent me the pictures from the Minnesota State Fair of the insane food things there. I was like, this is giving me heartburn looking at pictures. Like, I can't even process this. Okay.
I'm just saying, when you make your crackers, when you make your cheese crackers, that's going to be a great topping on a hot dish.
Oh my, You could even crush them up a little bit,
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
powdered.
It might take the place of whatever. I think they use Kurt will have to correct us. Don't they use cereals on it? like
Cereals or jerky fried onions or some kind of
stuff like that. So
crunch
there
up
you
the
go.
Fritos.
Yeah. So you have to taco season cheese and then crush it up on top of something. It's coming, Kurt. I'm trying to help you out. I'm throwing you a bone
Yeah.
here for your hot dish. Okay,
But
go ahead.
you'll have to hand make your cauliflower tots and then put that in the hot dish and then put the cheese. Yeah. What was the first question again, Scott? I'm sorry.
Earliest memory in the kitchen.
Oh, earliest memory in the kitchen. You know, my mom was a good baker, and she actually taught me the importance of having all the spices. So that's a good early memory. But she was not the best savory dinner maker. However, that's because she was the daughter of a generation that was marketed to for convenience. So then I come along like this, and then likewise in my Italian family, you know, making sauce was really important. But my dad never made anything, first of all, because he's an Italian man. God forbid you teach the men how to cook. Like, I'm really proud of Vinnie now for like knowing how to cook some things. Like, he's really become self-taught. My husband too. He never learned. He can make, when we first got married, he could make his grandmother's sauce and meatballs, and that was it. And nothing else. Now he can make a ton of stuff, you know, because they learned, and I'm proud of them. But, you know, it's very interesting to have to like put piece memories together, because I write a lot of recipes from memories. Whether it's like, oh, we used to go to this place and they did the shrimp, and I want to make that sort of scampi that I remember eating at Chesapeake Bay Seafood House as a kid. Robyn will appreciate that. You know, I want to recreate, you know, different things. But early memories in the kitchen, I got to be honest, my earliest memories, I have some really early memories of watching Julia Child or The Frugal Gourmet. And I was only allowed to watch PBS unless my mom wasn't home, because back then in the 70s, you just left the kids alone. Or I'd come home from school. I was a latchkey kid. My mom worked so many jobs making it work. You know what I mean? So I was on my own a lot. So if I found a recipe, or if I watched somebody make something like Julia Child making something on TV, I would then go to our fridge, and we didn't have the kinds of food. We didn't have fresh food. We didn't have a lot of food. So I actually think that one of my big core motivators was being food starved. I wasn't starved. I mean, I ate, but it wasn't fresh foods. It wasn't like, oh, my mom had a home cooked meal on the table. No, she left for work at 5:30 a.m. She came back around 7 p.m. and then taught piano until 10 p.m. And, or she would go do another job on the weekend, or she would play. She was a musician, so she would play the organ at church, or she played the organ for a wedding or a funeral, you know. And so, and then she went back to school and became a minister. So cooking wasn't part of the lifestyle, but it was something that I really wanted to do. I have some early memories at friends' houses though, and those are very good memories. Yeah.
I also have another question from Mike. He says, I came from Eat Happy Kitchen with the first wave of Robies. He says,
nice.
He says, what has been your most gratifying success story that you have heard or seen, not named Scott King?
Oh God, I was going to say Scott King. Yeah, you called my bluff.
I didn't add that, I promise.
I know you didn't. You're too modest to do that. God, I don't have a favorite success story. There's so many widely varied success stories that it's just, you know what I want to say? The success stories are amazing. Please keep posting them. Non-scale victories, please keep posting them. You're inspiring people to stick with it. There's nobody who does this in a day. The success stories are so important because like, and Vinnie and I feel the same way about this. Like, like, okay, great. You have heard our information or maybe bought my cookbook and it helped. I'm so glad you did the work. You're dealing with your set of beliefs, your childhood trauma, your whatever you're dealing with that you have to work through, and you will work through it. If you commit to NSNG for any length of time, stuff's going to come up and you're working hard to work through it. I've never met a single person who's like, well, I lost 100 pounds and it completely never changed as a person. Like, you change. It's part of the journey of it. So I will say this, there's no way that I would pick like a favorite success story, because there isn't one, because everybody who's had successes, even down to the minutest success, everyone's different and they come from a different place and they're all important. When a woman comes up to me and says, oh my God, I had the worst cystic acne, like boils on my face, and I cooked from your cookbook and my skin's now clear, and I see their face and their skin is clear and it looks amazing, that's no less important, because that's no less important than somebody who got off of their metformin or whatever type 2 diabetes medication. It's what has changed for them that helped their lives. You know what I mean? Robyn?
That was for Scott, but okay, I'll talk now. No,
Okay,
I wanted
Robyn.
to say that when we try to find guests for our show and we ask people, a lot of times I get the response, my story is not good enough. And I always come back with, no, everyone's story matters. And sometimes the ones where people feel like, well, I didn't have any, because they'll compare themselves to me. Well, I didn't change my mental health, so obviously
therefore,
I don't have a big story. But I find that the story that doesn't have that is the one that resonates the most with the most people. It covers the most ground. And I love those stories, the quote unquote normal stories. I just wanted to change a couple things, and then all of this extra stuff happened to me that made it so much better. And those are my favorite.
I got to say, we're humans, and humans grow, change, and evolve through stories. We are affected the most through stories, and everyone's story needs to be told. And not that you have time to listen to all the stories, but for people who are looking for inspiration, please post your stories, your non-scale victories, I thought this was going to happen, but then this happened, because you'd be shocked at how much we identify in each other's stories. Like, it's so important. And one thing that I didn't mention yet that I probably should mention is that my mom was, even though after she gave up gluten, she was a terrible sugar addict. She was so addicted to sugar. She would only eat sugar for several meals in a row. She would eat those meringue cookies from Trader Joe's. She would eat Red Hots and Necco wafers. And like, she would just eat sugar. How this woman did not develop type 2 diabetes is a mystery to me. But she had all sorts of other things going on, that her body was not strong. And she thought, so she passed away in 2014. So it's very much still at the beginning of what this journey was for me. And she thought it was crazy. She was still very much in the portion control, which, by the way, portion control is not wrong either. It's just, sometimes you have to watch your portions and you have to do NSNG. That's my thing, but that's what works for me. So not like I'm weighing and measuring, but I just eat less now. I have to eat less, at my post-menopausal age. But, watching my mom have this sugar addiction and not being able to find a way to step in and help. I was not able to figure out how to communicate with her about this work that's so important. I know she knows it now, but I was not able to get there with her. And it was something that I beat myself up about for several years after her death. Like, I wish I had tried harder, but now you have to come to a point where you forgive yourself. But that's a big part of my motivator. When you sit next to somebody and you hold their hand as they leave this world and you think, oh God, could I have done something to help prevent this? And that sticks with you and is very much a motivator in the back of my head. So tell your stories. I don't have a favorite. I love all of them. And I'm a human too. When I read y'all's victories, I'm like, oh, that's cool. Oh yeah, I forgot that happened to me too. Like, it's important for us to be reminding ourselves of this. It doesn't necessarily, it's been how many years, and not everything is second nature. Like, you still have to, that's why yoga people say that it's a practice. You know what I mean? It's still, you're still very much getting it into your bones, into your nervous system. It takes a lot to dismantle all that effery from childhood and to become this new version of yourself. It takes a lot. And the stories is what, to me, brings stuff to life. I love hearing the stories.
I do have a question, but I want to piggyback on that. That's I agree with you 100%. The testimonies are so important because you never know how it's going to resonate with somebody, because my story is not going to resonate with somebody else's story. Neither are your guys's. And the great thing about a testimony is no one can ever argue against it because it's real. It happened to you.
It's
and
your
there's
experience.
no way around it. I mean, they
Yeah.
can dispute it as much as they want, but there's no way they can argue against your testimony. So now I'm off my pedestal.
I love it.
But Natalie, our friend Natalie, has two questions. She told me to say, tell Robyn to ask the tomato question. And also, what products do you use on your skin? It's absolutely fabulous, and us gals want to know, or the gals want to know.
What's the tomato question? And then we'll go to skin. Which, by the way, I have wrinkles. See, I got wrinkles. By the way, dimples, when you're young, cute. When you're old, they're just wrinkles. Dimples are wrinkles. So cool.
Okay. Well, we'll get into that after this one. So
yes.
The story goes, I was talking to Natalie earlier today, and she said that you and Vinnie were having a conversation one time on a podcast. And I know how you remember every single conversation you've ever had with Vinnie. So just tap into that. But it
do I need to meditate? Do I need to get into meditative state?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. No, it's just basically that you had asked a question, and the question was, why shouldn't we have tomatoes every day? But Vinnie, being Vinnie, went off on something else and never got to it. So she has been curious about that question ever since, and wants to know why we shouldn't be eating tomato every day.
Oh,
right. It's a hard question. So I tried to help. Okay. Because
I would back it. I want to hear what you have to say, but I would back it up going, why are we not, who said we're not supposed to eat tomatoes every day? I'm just curious.
Yeah,
like, what is that a thing?
Maybe she'll say something to us and
the question behind the question.
The question behind the question. There was backstory.
Understand the paradigm that's going on. Yeah.
Well, you're supposed
go ahead.
to remember the conversation you were having. Well, I was just going to say that since tomatoes are technically a fruit, that, if you're eating lots and lots of tomatoes every single day, that is going to add up. It would be the same as eating a lot of dairy every single day. Specifically drinking a lot of dairy every day. That sugar will add up and can't be good. I can't do tomatoes every day. I'll notice it because perhaps it's the acidity, but it'll affect my skin. I'll feel it in my skin. But
you might have a nightshades issue.
Probably. I definitely know that I'm dealing with fun food issues, and I'm hoping that I didn't just find my second autoimmune disease. So,
I mean, it's not about a specific thing to nightshades. Is that sometimes it will, but it's actually much rarer. But I know that Robyn is very much in touch with her body, so nightshades become a one of those culprits that they tell people to cut out, and then if you reintroduce it, and it's okay. I don't think that here's what I say, and Vinnie and I talk about this a lot, because carrots is another one. People are like, what about carrots, baby carrots, sugar carrots, and tomatoes? I feel like are lumped into the same thing. Same with zucchini. I just, how many tomatoes is one eating in a day? That seems excessive. However, maybe people are abusing tomatoes and carrots, but once you go NSNG, real foods should not send you into a tizzy unless you're abusing the foods. So the tomato question would be, if you're type 1 diabetic, absolutely tomatoes, carrots, anything that has a carbohydrate will cause an insulin spike, and a blood sugar spike, and your insulin pump will go off to help you regulate that for sure. Absolutely, 1,000%. But eating tomatoes or even pasta sauce, which is going to be ours doesn't have paste, so it's not concentrated. It's just tomatoes. You don't eat a whole jar of sauce. Are you drinking it? Like, I don't, I can't eat that much.
She did tell me she loves your sauce so much she could totally drink it at all times.
I mean, listen, I have taken my sauce and put some chicken broth in it and some cream in it and turned it into like a really fast bisque. You can also like puree it, and it's basically a tomato soup. You can definitely do that. Here's what I say. If anything makes you crave carbs after you eat it, then don't eat that thing. If Natalie the tomatoes don't agree with you, or Robyn, the tomatoes don't agree with you, don't eat the thing. Some people can eat it, no problem. But I would never, here's the thing. It's never about the food or demonizing the food when it's like a fruit or a vegetable, like a whole food. That's where I might differ from Vinnie, because everyone's on a different part in their journey. It's kind of what I'm trying to say. Some people can just they have to go carnivore. They can't even have a little bit of leafy greens or broccoli. It sets them off, and they want, it upsets their stomach. That's totally fine. Some people can't do the tomato, totally fine. Some people can't do the carrot. I'll eat the whole bag. Someone said, I'll eat the whole bag of baby carrot, because I always said that on the podcast, like, who's eating all these carrots? Carrots are not that good. Like, what are you doing? But then somebody's like, no, I like them, and it gives me the crunch, and I can eat the whole bag. I'm like, okay, fair enough. I'm sorry, I made the assumption that everyone thinks like me. They don't. Not everybody thinks that carrots, some people think carrots are great. I'm like, carrots are okay, dipped in a couple things, but then I'm like, I'm tired of those carrots. Gross. I just want to eat the ranch dip with a spoon. That's my issue. So, and I agree on dairy too. Dairy is one of those things that's real easy to overeat. So are nuts. So you got to watch yourself. And if you do overeat it, just clock what happens. Ooh, you know what? I ate all those nuts, and then I wanted to peck around, and I really was craving French fries. I never crave French fries, or whatever it is. Become a really good observer at what your body and your habits are and do. Don't let it be a thing where you like judge yourself, like, oh, I ate too many tomatoes, I'm a shithead now, I'm never going to lose weight. But because we do that, we have a tendency to want to beat ourselves up. So I think the gift of self-observation is really helpful in those things. You know what I've observed? Those tomatoes, they make my knuckles hurt, and I wake up with sore joints, so I will not do that anymore. And I have to be real careful. I can only eat a little bit at a time. Great. I get that.
I think it's important to stop right here for a second and reiterate that because this community is so big with so many different ranges of ways of eating, that it's really easy to look at NSNG, no sugars, no grains, and think that it is a completely ketogenic, as in therapeutic ketogenic diet. And it's really not. You can be in ketosis and be NSNG, but it's not necessarily what's going to happen. If you're just going to eat whole foods and not really measure and not really portion and all that kind of stuff, you can still have a whole bunch of success and eat all the things that you like, except for the carbs, or except for the refined carbs and the oils,
right?
And be totally fine. Other people need to dial it in much further and get themselves into ketosis. Most of the time, that's for a health reason, a very specific health reason. So yeah, I get it. Tomatoes, a fruit, and people don't want to eat fruits because they're going to be higher glycemic scale. But it's not. It's still whole food, and within the bound of the thought of NSNG, it's a completely normal thing to eat. And sure, why not have, if it's not going to bother you in a sick way, then
in an inflammatory way. We don't want it to inflame you. Yeah.
So I think maybe
really
that's where
good.
people get confused, because they'll be NSNG, and then all of a sudden somebody will give this advice that's coming in from a like ketosis, like they must be at this very specific state, and that would knock them out because it's just sweet enough for that person, but it's not going to be like that for every single person.
And like there was a post in my group either today or yesterday, and I'm waiting for the comments where they put the ribeye with the butter, and then there was a half a sweet potato there, and I was like, oh, here we go, here we go.
I saw
God
that,
forbid
and
you
yes,
put a half a sweet potato, and I was like, great, good for you. Like whatever, it works for you. I'm not gonna. Yes, we are NSNG. That's at the base of what we do, but I would never sit there and be like, if the sweet potato works for your body, I'm not going to demonize a sweet potato because yeah, guess what? There are some nutrients in there. It's not like a completely crappy food. It's not a processed food. So I'm not going to like demonize it. However, there are a lot of people who are brand new and would go, well, hold on. They said about the sweet potatoes, I'm not supposed to have them. Yeah, you can't for a little while. Maybe even a long while. We don't know yet until you get into it and start mixing it up and seeing what your body responds to. There is an issue, and I'm just going to call it out. And Natalie, I'm not saying this about you at all, but there is an issue with people who say, well, I've been so strict, and then I've spent time with them and they're eating a fried thing or they're eating, and I'm like, don't say, you have to really give your body some time to heal, and then make the decision of like, you know what, I'm going to do this experiment and do but you have to really go NSNG for at least 30 to 60 days. I prefer 60 days without one cheat bite, to really see how your body's improving. And then trust me, when you have some bites of the thing that doesn't agree with your body, you'll know it. It'll jump right out you. But Robyn, I thought you put that really well, that we're a diverse group.
Yeah. And it's really easy to put what we do and throw that on somebody else, but not take that second to understand where that person is. So that's the sweet
Absolutely.
potato thing. Somebody showing a half a sweet potato on their plate. It's not going to be the end of the world. And I've heard you say this a million times. We're all adults. We can make the choice that we want to make.
Yeah.
And we know what the consequences are for our own bodies based on the decisions we make. So,
we forget that. And we're all brought up in this culture of this, like, first of all, we're hammered with advertising. We're hammered with this kind of father knows best attitude of like, oh, well, I don't know what I'm talking about, but all the doctors and the experts I see on TV, they know. So I can't be trusted to make decisions for myself. And that they want you to think that way so that you continue to buy the things, the diet plans and the potions and the powders and the pills. And it's sometimes very revolutionary to be like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm this age and I'm just now peeling back the layers of that onion. But it is true. And I tell people who immediately buy the book or buy one of the books and immediately go, well, you have a pumpkin pie in there and it's got sugar. And I'm like, yeah, because guess what? You have a lot of years left to live and you might want to make a pumpkin pie. I don't know, but you don't have to. You can rip that chapter out and throw it in the trash. I don't care. But comes back to the thing of like, you're an adult. We get to pick what works for you and throw out what doesn't. And I would assume if you're listening this far into this live stream, we're all picking this, right? We're all choosing this life.
I think everyone, I'm looking at the chat right now and everybody's saying exactly. So actually I say everyone, it may have been Rose 3 different times, but that's how important that's how important that statement was, that she chimed in 3 times, or it may have been a spelling error, whatever.
She's just trying to get her point across and I love it.
She is. Yes. So Scott, are there any further questions coming through? I didn't watch for questions. I just happened to look over when that happened.
No, looks like we're in the clear or all caught up right now.
We're all caught up on questions. Well, that's
skin. We didn't talk about
skin.
skin.
Oh, right. The skincare.
Yes.
What is your
here's
skincare?
The number one thing for good skin, and men, you should listen to this too. Don't eat sugar and don't eat grains. That's the number one. And also, if you could get a time machine and go back to the 80s and don't go out in the sun so much in the 80s when all we put on was, what is that stuff? Banana tropic. What is it?
Banana
Hawaiian
boat.
tropic
Yeah.
banana.
Yeah,
Banana boat.
Trop-
Yeah. Don't wear that. Don't wear baby oil and go stand out in the sun when you're 17 years old. And then I really am constantly on the prowl for good products that are also clean. One of my earliest things where I should have known the writing was on the wall with people trying to pull the wool over our eyes. There was this woman named Paula Begoun or Begoun. I don't know how to say her last name, Begoun. And she wrote a book called Don't Go to the Cosmetics Counter Without Me. And I bought every edition. I don't think she does it anymore. She might not even still be alive. I don't know. I bought every edition of that book because she talked about ingredients she would talk about what's BS. She would talk about, stuff that actually does work and is effective. And then her message got a little diluted because she did come out with her own skincare products, but I kind of liked some of her products. I get influenced all the time watching TikTok to get a skin cream or a neck cream or a thing. And by the way, they're all the same creams. I don't know why we have to buy eye cream and skin cream and neck cream and hand cream and foot cream and body cream. It's the same cream. So I will say now, being older and having had really oily skin, I just was genetically lucky with the Italian skin of not having to I never put moisturizer on until I was about 40 something. Never once put it on. Now, again, God is having a bit of a laugh on my behalf because going through a surgical menopause, getting the full hysterectomy and the whole thing, my skin completely changed overnight. It aged me. This past year has aged me. So I am back on, I'm on some hormone therapy. I'm on some estrogen, estradiol. But there is a face cream. So if you're of a certain age, you can get it from Alloy, myalloy.com. And it's I think it's called M4 cream. It's an estradiol face cream. I was talking with my dermatologist about it because I was like, I got influenced to buy it. Is it stupid? She's like, no, actually, I read the studies and they said that it does help the deeper lines. She said the data was pretty good on the deeper lines, which, to be honest with you, not a lot of creams are going to take care of the deeper lines. I went through a phase last year where I was like, well, I'm not going to do Botox anymore. I'm just going to go ahead and age gracefully. And so I didn't put anything in my face for like a year. And then I shot cooking videos about 2 months ago. And I did not like what I saw. So I went back and got some Botox for the first time in a year. Boy, the price of Botox has gone up. That hurt my feelings in a number of ways. But I'm choosing to do it. And I'm choosing to allocate my dollars to it because that's what makes me feel good. You don't have to do that at all. Nobody has to do Botox. And in fact, it's probably a stupid thing to do. And I'm going to find out in 20 years that it was dumb. But as far as I loved, I did the castor oil challenge I talked about on my Substack. And the castor oil challenge was just something I made. I just slathered castor oil on my face and my neck and my feet and my elbows and my knees for a month. And I loved how soft it made everything. But then other people were like, oh, it clears up blemishes. And it does. And it didn't do any of that for me. But I thought it definitely made my skin softer. So shout out to castor oil. Link to Queen of Thrones, I think it's called, or something like that. Yeah, Queen of Thrones. They have an organic castor oil, and you're supposed to get it in the glass bottle, not the plastic. So I don't wear sunscreen, but I also wear hats. For me, I found that when I put on a sunscreen, I go in the sun, I get a really bad rash. So I don't know if I'm allergic to sunscreen, but that's why I don't wear it. I'm not trying to say F you to sunscreen. I'm curious I've never tried the tallow sunscreen. That's something on my list. Now that I've said it, my phone is listening and I'm sure I'll get an ad for it and I'll get influenced and I'll buy it. But I'm 51. I get influenced all the time by skincare products, but I do research them with I know the website, the EWG Skin Deep website is great for if you're in the store and you're like, I want to buy this thing, and you can scan the barcode and it will tell you what the allergen rating is, what the carcinogen rating is, and the ingredient, if it's high quality or not. So that's pretty, it doesn't have every product, but it has a lot of stuff in there. So that's some skin stuff. for miladies.
So
Men too. Men actually care about their skin, though. That's the thing. Men do care about their skin.
They do, yeah.
And they should.
So we buy a half a cow. So this last time we got a half a cow, the rancher that came to the house, and he was like, I have a whole bunch of tallow, and it's,
awesome.
Do you want it? And I was like, yes, I do. So I, for the first time, made my own whipped tallow.
What's in it? Are you going to publish the recipe?
Here's what it is. Ready? Tallow. It's just tallow.
That's it? You didn't put any like lotion or filler or like jojoba oil or anything?
And what this did was
awesome.
to open my eyes is that you melt it down, you let it cool just enough, and then you whip it. And then it turns into, it's like making butter. It's like suddenly it turns into what looks like lotion, because we've all grown up knowing what lotion looks like, right? So all of these years, we've been using all of these chemicals to make this thing that all it was cooled down liquid tallow whipped.
The answer was in front of us all along, is what you're saying.
All the time, and that's all I use. Now I do, you can't, I have some with and some without, but you can put, like I put lavender in it.
You do a little scent.
Yeah, a little oil in it, but it's not necessary. It works just fine.
I want this.
You
just influenced me.
I influenced you. And then there's recipes for what you put in it to make it a sunscreen, or what you can put in it to, just like, cool. I forgot what I think it's zinc. I think you just buy zinc powder.
Yeah,
so
I bet it
while
is.
you're whipping it, you just put the zinc powder in, and then what you put it on it would do.
Yeah,
that.
You don't want chemical sunscreens anyway. You want the ones with zinc. So why not make it? That is brilliant.
Yeah. So it was just very eye-opening, because we're always looking for the perfect product, but the products are right there. If you buy meat, if you're not lucky like me and live in Texas and can have access to a cow, then we can you could just take your steaks before you cook it, cut a little bit off, save it a little bit at a time. You don't need much to make a nice amount of it. So everybody,
amazing.
I need to let y'all know that Anna has to run, so I can't ask her my last question, because we always
ask it real quick. Go do it. I want to answer it.
What is one piece of advice that you would give someone who is just embarking on their health journey?
Ooh. Commit to your NSNG. I know I already said this. Commit to 30 days. It's November 14th right now. So we have Thanksgiving. We have whatever Christmas parties you're going to go to. We got Hanukkah. We got so much good stuff happening. So I would say commit. That's the number one thing. It's life happens. We forget. Sometimes you forget. I remember cooking for my kid and being like, oh, I'm just going to eat her food while I'm cooking it. Like, you just blindly eat stuff. You know what I mean? Committing means that you are taking this 40,000 foot view of your life and identifying all those places where it's going to be difficult for you, and saying, I'm going to step up and manage these things for myself. And then it becomes easier.
That is the perfect, short, sweet answer. Commit to what you want to do. And, and the thing that goes along with that is that we're all here for you. So if you're just starting out, or if you're just struggling or whatever, and I always say this, if there's somebody that that's in the community that you haven't seen in a while, reach out, because that usually means they're a little bit embarrassed about what's going on in their life. Reach out, check on them, see how they're doing. I was just gone for a month, and I had several people reach out to me and see if I was okay. So it makes a big difference. So do that. Help somebody else out with their commitment to themselves.
And anybody who's listening, I hope that you guys are coaching people. I hope that you have coaching clients, because you're amazing. And thank you for what you do for this community.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
We're working on it.
Good.
That's right.
Good.
We're building our businesses as we speak.
I'm so proud of y'all. All right. I love you guys so much. I'm jumping.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes. All right. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye, everybody.
All right. Bye. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Sorry that we knew that she had to go a little early today, so we tried to start early. So thank you for working with us on our quick schedule change. We will actually be meeting again next week with a guest that is a personal friend of Scott's. So look for more information for that. I'll be posting it on our social channels tomorrow. Thank you again for joining us, and we will see you next week. Bye.